Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler, and I'm trying to stop worrying and love the bomb. I was finally able to go to the theater and see Oppenheimer over the weekend, and today we are going to give some quick takes on the film that is not only thought-provoking, but also very significant. I'm bringing in frequent guest Charles Mills to weigh in on one of the most successful films of the year so far. So how are you doing, Charles?
I'm good. And before we get started, I just wanted to ask, do I need to have watched Barbie, or is it going to be any spoilers for? I don't know how this works.
No, not at all. I think the weekend is just fascinating because I can't think of really two very different films.
We imagine a future, and our imaginings horrify us. They won't fear it until they understand it.
Oppenheimer is an epic biopic thriller written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It's based on the 2005 Pulitzer Prize winning biography, American Prometheus, and the film chronicles the career of American theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer. The story predominantly focuses on Oppenheimer's early studies, his direction of the Manhattan Project during World War II, and his eventual fall from grace due to his 1954 security hearing. Cillian Murphy stars as the title character. Emily Blunt plays his wife, Kitty. There's also roles played by Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, and then just tons of faces you'll probably be like, wait, I know this person. Wait, I didn't know he was in this. I didn't know she was in this. I think it's kind of fun to almost be surprised with some of those. So I think I saw this, but you saw this movie on opening weekend, right?
Mm-hmm, I did.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it in the IMAX 70 millimeter because I believe there's only like 13 theaters in the world that can show it that way or something. And it is sold out, still sold out. It's sold out so far weeks in advance. I'm like, I can't. So I ended up seeing it in just a regular theater, which I was bummed about that. Having said that, though, I like this movie a lot, and I would want to go see it again if I ever get a chance in the IMAX 70. But yeah, no, I saw it opening weekend, and I mean, I know of the man roughly, and I know he was kind of after the whole bomb. I know he was kind of ostracized a little bit. That was the extent that I knew of it. And I knew that Einstein had helped, but again, I didn't know much of it. So what's amazing to me is that you mentioned it's a thriller, and it's exciting in a lot of ways, and it probably more than it has any right to be, because it's a pretty, I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't say it's slow. I've heard a lot of people describe it as slow, but I mean, there's not like a lot of action that happens. It's a 3-hour dialogue heavy movie.
Yes.
But it's kind of the culmination of Christopher Nolan's career. I'm not going to say it's his best movie, but it is. It's like hit all of the style that he's been inventing over the years.
Mm-hmm.
In Memento, using the black and white to show a different timeline, and in Dunkirk, mixing and cutting across times.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool seeing it all come together, and that's what makes this movie particularly interesting, is the way it's put together. How time is just, you're in and out of time all over the place, and sometimes with very minimal differences between, the characters, the way they look and all that. You're bouncing around all over the place, but it somehow is coherent.
Yes.
I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, you said it. It's almost like you read my mind. Yeah, you're right. This movie just kind of is a culmination of just everything that he's done. It's kind of led up to this point. And yes, it's dialogue heavy, but I didn't think it was slow at all. In fact, I'd be almost a little interested to see how long the longest scene is that plays out, because he is going back and forth all the time. And I think it's almost recognizing that this, I'm not like a sciencey guy, but he does a really good job, because this movie is full of science jargon, and it's almost like he's utilizing these editing techniques to move the story along. And he even though really, I mean, this is kind of, even if like I didn't know all the details, I really didn't know much about Oppenheimer the man, but we have some historical context of the atom bomb in World War II. I didn't know all the details, but also he does a good job with this technique of you in a way don't know where things are going, even though we have a very like like we know who wins the war, but there's still, I would say, a moment in this movie where you're still kind of on the edge of your seat about like what's going to happen, And so I think he does a masterful job of that. I mean, I do think this movie is playing off a lot of the success of Barbie. So a lot of people, made a weekend out of it, which I think is great. I mean, people going to movies and seeing these original stories, so to speak, not necessarily based on a comic book character or anything like that. But it just almost tickles me to think that people
tickles your pink.
Yes, yeah, that this movie is doing so well because it's sciencey, it's 3 hours long, but it makes me happy that people are embracing this film, because even though I'd probably agree with you that I don't think this is his best film, but it's also the one I'm so glad he's taken on this type of material.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking that when you were talking about the money of it, like I think outside of the Batman trilogy, this is his highest grossing movie.
Wow.
So, which is crazy considering he's had such big hits,
Yeah.
Inception and was Tenet a hit? I can't remember if Tenet actually was a hit or not. I know that came out during the pandemic.
It was, it came out. That one, it might have broke some records just for the year, just because it might have been the only movie that was actually out in the theaters at the time. But yeah.
But what's cool also about it is the fact that he's shooting this movie with these IMAX cameras, and I know that's kind of become just like buzzwords to a lot of people, but I don't think people fully understand, because IMAX, a lot of times it's just a movie that's blown up to IMAX or whatever. He's shooting, this is film. This is not digital. He's shooting on large format film. And for this movie in particular, Kodak had to create black and white IMAX film. That wasn't converted in post, that he shot it in black and white. And when you think about that, it's kind of crazy that it's a dialogue-driven drama that was shot on these large format cameras.
Yeah,
it's wild. And the fact that he also, I believe he claimed that he has no computer-generated imagery in the movie. That he used, obviously he removed stuff in post, stuff like that, but there's nothing like created like in 3D, and then even the bomb, the explosion was done practically. So it's kind of amazing, but it just strikes me as very crazy that like they're inventing like new technology for this movie. And there is part of me that's like, did it need it? Like, did it need this like giant format black and white? I don't know. I don't know. It's a case for that. It's like, I love it though, because if I could ever go and see it in an IMAX 70 millimeter screening, I would love to. I don't know if it needed to be shot this way, but it was beautiful. And
it was beautiful, yeah.
And I really appreciate someone shooting black and white as black and white, and not just there was intent behind that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Robert Downey Jr. I think stole the show personally.
He did.
And I think he will win an Oscar for this, for supporting actor.
He really gets to chew on the scenery in this movie, but it is fun to see him. I mean, he's always been a great actor, but I'm glad he was, it's been a while since he's been given a role that plays off his strengths so well.
And you heard that interview that he was, he talked about, he was kind of taking a shot at Marvel a little bit, because he was basically saying that he hasn't really like stretch his acting muscle in so long, having played all the Marvel stuff, and that he had kind of forgotten like how to play outside of like the Iron Man stuff. Like he kind of got into that, almost sounded like he was kind of coasting along, which I thought he was fantastic in all the Marvel movies. I really did. But basically Christopher Nolan had to kind of like really coax it out of him to get a great performance that is nothing like Iron Man. But I really do think he'll win an Oscar for it, because his, and so I also think, how do you say his name? Is it Cillian?
Yeah, Cillian Murphy. Yes.
Yeah. So I think Cillian will also win Best Actor. But
I thought he was wonderful.
he was. But having said that, I really think Robert Downey Jr.'s character is what drives the narrative. Like it was, it was just fascinating. And Matt Damon was great too. I think Matt Damon's kind of the humor of this, and a lot of the dialogue in his scenes was very like Social Network style. It was like there was a lot of like really fast rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, really like witty dialogue that I loved. But yeah, I think Robert Downey Jr. Again, I don't want to get into spoilers of it, but the role that he was tasked to play could have been so one-dimensional and you know, just weird and not memorable. And instead, it's like it is the narrative device, the way they used him, and like I loved it.
Yeah, and I really liked Cillian Murphy a lot because he almost, it kind of in a weird way kind of remind me of a Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood.
Oh yeah, I saw that too.
And that one was, you know, that obviously that role is, I mean, just super memorable and way over the top. And I mean, this is a very different performance, and it could have easily gotten into that territory, but he plays him, you know, I just thought we could really like see how his thought process changed over the years of his life, you know. So he's this brash, cocky dude, and how he starts really kind of finally digesting the effects of all their work, you know. Right. And so I think you could really see that like over time, the way he stays the same person, but but kind of develops and morphs like over time. I thought it was really, really good.
I had read somewhere that like people were kind of upset because it was like they thought they were making a martyr out of this guy that made the bomb and killed so many like Japanese people, which obviously there's a lot of weight in this movie about that. But yeah, but I didn't see them as making a martyr out of him. In fact,
I didn't either.
I feel like they went out of their way to make him a kind of a bad guy, especially early on. Like one of the first scenes with him is like he's where was he at Cambridge, wherever he was at. He's like, he tries to poison his teacher because his teacher kind of gives him a hard time. And it's like, wow, okay, so that's your like introduction to this character. It's like, you're not making him look good there. And then when, you know, when he comes home and his kid is screaming and his wife's upset, like his first thought is to give away his kid. Yeah. I mean, as a parent, like those two scenes, the poisoning a teacher and giving away your kid, it's like, at first I was like, I'm not going to be able to connect with this guy at all. They're making him out to be almost a monster, like something wrong with him, you know. And then I was thinking maybe that's the way his mind worked. So I do not think they're putting him in a good light. Now they do show the brilliance of him and all of that, but they do show, like you said, it's the changes that he goes through, and he does realize the error of his ways, but he was just almost so arrogant in his pursuit. And then not only that, but it's like the government's kind of pushing him to do it too, because they don't want the Nazis to get the bomb before them. So,
right. Yeah.
But I think they kind of showed him warts and all. I do not think they tried to downplay his bad qualities. Which is interesting. It's a very interesting take on him.
Yeah. And I agree with you as well. And I thought that, you know, I think the powerful thing about this story is just this moral quandary that it presents, you know, and they even recognize, you know, what a devastating effect that this bomb will have. But, you know, you have it juxtaposed with like, well, the Germans have been working on this like for a long time. So like kind of one of those, like, you know, if we don't do it, somebody will, and right. You know, that'll affect us, and that'll affect, you know, certainly for him, you know, affecting his heritage and his Jewish background and everything. He did change, trying to redeem himself, you know, I think as best as he could, but I don't think it was still glorifying what he did. I thought it was perfectly posed. He was just kind of doing like what he could, you know, and so and I thought, I mean, I still, even when the movie finished, even though this is something that we've like always have talked about with, you know, history and just the effects of things, and, you know, I would say I'm more of a pacifist than a lot of other people, and it really brings these like lots of feelings and stuff. But then it's also mired with this, this movie is essentially also a political thriller in the sense of like, oh gosh, politics just skewers all of this, So
what was funny about the political aspect of it? I mean, funny to me is that I actually didn't know the difference between the A bomb and the H bomb. And so when I assumed they were the same thing. I've heard it. I just thought they were interchangeable. And so when they're talking in the movie, I'm like, well, what is he talking about? He doesn't want to make the hydrogen bomb, the H bomb. And I'm like, what? And so that was one of those things I had to actually come home and look it up. And so it's like, and then I was like, okay, did we ever end up using an H bomb in war? And it turns out that they were made despite Oppenheimer not wanting to make them, but they have never been used. No country has ever used an H bomb, a hydrogen bomb in war. So in some ways, I would say that he's probably should be given credit for that. I mean, I know there's the whole mutually assisted destruction or mutually assured destruction, but it's just fascinating to me that like this one atomic bomb, and then now there's all these other much bigger bombs out there. A hydrogen bomb is much bigger than an atomic bomb, and they have not been used in all the years since they were made, which was, so it's an interesting thing because it's not like far away history. We're still in the middle of this kind of thing, and it's like, yeesh. Especially with everything going on in Russia now, and knowing that the Soviet Union, or Russia, which Putin's trying to kind of rebuild the Soviet Union, it seems like, but knowing all that, and knowing that they have hydrogen bombs and we have hydrogen bombs, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's
kind of scary.
That's a good way.
Not kind of scary. It's extremely scary.
Yeah. That's kind of a good way to sum up how you feel after this film is, yeesh. You're just like, whoo. Yeah, for sure. Well, I one thing I just want to quickly say is that, and I think Nolan, he's been criticized a lot with how he writes female characters, and you could kind of, I think he was really trying to solve that with this film. I still don't think he quite stuck the landing. My kind of one big critique, I thought Emily Blunt was really misused in this movie. And she plays a big part, certainly at the end, but I didn't think up to that point she had necessarily earned the action that she takes. But that was kind of my one little, like, the movie so shifts after, kind of I would say probably the last 45 minutes to an hour. And I thought it was good, but all of a sudden it kind of felt like Nolan was really kind of telling us how to feel during everything, when up to that point I felt like we were still getting to kind of decide for ourselves.
She was okay. I mean, I don't know if maybe you just liked her more than I did. I didn't think she was bad, but the scene I love though, and it's kind of a weird scene, is when they're like having her being confronted with the whole, like, the affair, like, and she's in that, and the way they visualize that, and it's a very interesting way to do that. Like, it's like putting all their dirty laundry out for the public to see and go on the record. I thought that was a really interesting moment, the way Nolan decided to do that. What did you think of Florence Pugh?
Well, she threw me off guard a little bit because I didn't know she was in the movie. Strangely enough, I know you could just go on IMDb and see all these things, but I like to kind of go in, pretty fresh and stuff like that. And so she's one of my favorite actresses. And so we saw a lot more of her than I was expecting, for sure. Yeah. And so the person literally next to me covered their eyes. And so in the theater, but I mean, I thought she was really effective in her role. I always think she's really good.
Can I mention one spoiler? Can we give a spoiler alert? Because there's something I do want to ask you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
So there's a sequence where spoiler. There's a sequence where it's a flashback to her, dying in the bathtub.
Yeah.
I took away that she had committed suicide, right? I don't know if that's what you took out of it, but apparently people have said that in one shot of the movie, there's a like a black leather glove hand, gloved hand pushing her head down.
I kind of wondered that. I did see that, and for a second I was kind of like, wait, did he, basically help her, assist her in killing herself?
So I did not notice it, and I don't know how I didn't, apparently, but there have been there's so much speculation on it. People were saying that, was it like his perspective and he's like blaming himself for it happening and it's like his hand? Other people said that it's the same kind of glove that the agents who were going through their trash earlier wore. And so the implication there is that the government killed her.
Oh, huh. Interesting.
And so I started researching that a little bit, and it's like there is that conspiracy theory, and it's been out there for a long time, like that may have been how she was killed. So it's another thing. I want to rewatch it again.
Interesting.
Speaking of that, I saw it at a theater where they were serving food, and that was probably one of the times when one of the waiters walked in front. But during the countdown of the bomb, that's when a waiter came and like asked me a question. I'm like looking around. I'm like, they're counting the bomb. This is 2 hours into the movie, man. Like, yeah. I'm trying to like look around. I'm like, I already gave you my card.
Oh man,
anyway, that's like several things I know I need to rewatch.
Yeah. That's a really interesting theory. Like I didn't take it necessarily that he actually physically had done it, but when he was just imagining what happened, he kind of thought like he was the cause, the cause for it and stuff like that. But that's interesting as far as the government agency, because I mean the movie is very clear on how, I mean, he was followed and monitored constantly, so I wouldn't put it past anybody
it's just such a weird the way I'm understanding that shot is like it was just one like quick shot, but that it just sold this idea that it wasn't exactly a suicide. So that's really interesting to me.
Well, so I was kind of looking back around this time. We had recorded our discussion about Everything Everywhere All at Once. And during that podcast, we had predicted that it would win Best Picture. I feel like, I mean, it's still early. There's still a lot of things to come out in the fall, but I think we both agree that this will garner a lot of nominations. You already talked about Downing's performance, and I think a lot of people will be, I think technically this will be nominated for a lot of things like editing and production design, costume design. I thought the makeup was really good as well.
Cinematography.
Yeah, cinematography. Do you think this movie will win Best Picture?
I can't even think of what else will be nominated, but yes, I do. It's just such a big picture, and I think he will finally win a directing Oscar. He's only been nominated to director like once, right? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it hasn't been very times. Yeah.
So I actually think this, because of the like monumental achievement that it is, I think he will win director for sure. I think Downey Jr. and Cillian, I think they're all kind of locks for this. So I will just call it now. We'll say it'll win Best Picture and editing and directing, and the score was a little weird in places, but it worked for it. It was really intense, kind of like the whole Dunkirk thing. So
yeah,
it's really interesting. But yeah, I'll call it now. Best Picture, sure. But I can't think of any other movies that would be nominated. Can you? Like, what's another front? Would you say Barbie? I mean, is that good?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was giving a nod. I wonder if the Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, I don't know if it can slip into a Best Picture nomination. I think it's
Best Animated Film for sure.
Yeah. So,
and then the Ninja Turtles movie was really good in that regard.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously there'll be Killers of the Flower Moon, will be coming out. It's
funny you say that. I'm just now listening to the book.
I highly recommend Oppenheimer. I mentioned kind of a couple of things I kind of got hung up with a little bit, but still, it's one of those movies. If it did win Best Picture, I'd totally support that. It's challenging, but also accessible. And I mean, it's kind of operating on all the technical levels, that it's everything coming together, including the writing, the actors, the directing, and everything like that. So yeah, it'll be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, Cillian is a fantastic actor anyway. He's been in almost every Christopher Nolan movie. So it's really cool that he's finally like a big starring role, and he's just knocked it out of the park. So.
Yeah, I've never seen Peaky Blinders, in which he starred in, and I heard a lot of people really
I've
like
seen a few
that
episodes
show.
of that. It's like you would not believe the difference in character he is from his
Yeah.
Oppenheimer performance. It's a totally just different person.
Yeah,
So,
So,
but he's good as Scarecrow. I think that's what a lot of people know him as.
right. And he was in 28 Days Later, I think. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the first, yes, the original one.
Yeah.
He's really good in that too.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good actor. So, well, thanks for taking the time to quickly talk about this. So,
yeah, of course. I know we're recording this fairly late. We're both tired, but I think this was a good discussion. So,
yeah,
I had fun. Seriously, anytime you want me back on, man, I love talking about movies. I could do it no matter what I'm feeling like. So,
awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.